Howdy folks, and welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. Today we have a realistic battle for you in the new American ground attack aircraft, the Douglas Skyraider. I'm a big fan of the Douglas Skyraider. Haven't played it in War Thunder yet, but it was an amazing aircraft in real life. The Skyraider is being flown for us today by Napalm Priest. He's a German player, and it's quite appropriate actually, the name Napalm Priest, because one thing that the Skyraider excelled at was delivering ordnance on ground targets like nothing else in the US Navy's arsenal. Napalm Priest has a tough game ahead of him, however, because this isn't just one of the first realistic battles he's ever flown. He's normally a dedicated arcade player, but with the exception of himself and a B-29 pilot, every player on his team is in a jet, and every player on the enemy team is in a jet. The enemy do have one prop-driven aircraft, but it's AI. So this is going to be a tough battle for him. The Skyraider was a post-World War II design, and it eventually replaced the US Navy's Dauntless dive bombers, which were old aircraft but much beloved by their crews. The Dauntless was actually supposed to have been replaced by the Curtiss Helldiver. The only problem with the Curtiss Helldiver was that it just didn't work as advertised. Flight crews hated it. They actually preferred their old but effective Dauntless dive bombers instead. Curtiss's Helldiver ran into innumerable problems during its development history. In fact, it actually entered service after the TBF Avenger, which began production 2 years after the Helldiver. Production of the Helldiver actually signalled the end for the Curtiss Aircraft Company. Even though it was a faster aircraft than the Dauntless, the US Navy refused to accept it into service until the Curtiss Company had made 880 modifications to their product. It was a terrible, terrible aircraft. And so US Navy flight crews would continue to fly the Dauntless dive bomber rather than use the Helldivers they were supposed to be using. US Navy badly needed a replacement. And so the Navy approached the Douglas Corporation and asked them to develop a successor to the Dauntless, and that initial project culminated in the Douglas Destroyer, which is also available in War Thunder. However, the Douglas Destroyer project was abandoned before it was completed. A number of prototypes were built, they never saw operational service, and only one exists today as a museum piece. Instead, the US Navy invited proposals to develop a optimized single-seat scout and torpedo bomber. 4 companies submitted proposals. 2 were approved, one from the Martin Company and one from the Douglas Company. And the Douglas design ended up the one being preferred. Initial flight of the first of 25 prototype XBT-2D Dauntless II aircraft was on the 18th of March 1945 with test pilot Laverne Brown at the controls. The US Navy was so impressed that initial production contracts followed 2 weeks later. The Douglas design couldn't carry the payload that the Martin design could, but it was more reliable, it was easier to fly, it was easier to handle on a carrier flight deck, and it was also designed for flexibility, with a whole range of different variants for different roles planned. Of the 25 prototypes, 19 were built in the basic attack configuration, 1 was fitted for electronic countermeasures, 2 were fitted out in night attack configuration, 1 was fitted as an airborne early warning flying radar platform, and 1 was fitted out in a photo reconnaissance configuration. The 25th prototype was used to evaluate an improved attack variant. All of these configurations reached production, except for the dedicated photo reconnaissance variant, which never entered service. In 1946, the Navy changed the name of the XBT-2D1, which is a bit of a mouthful, with the production version becoming the AD-1 Skyraider, with AD standing for Attack Douglas. The first AD-1 performed its initial flight on the 5th of November 1946 and went into formal service in 1947. 242 AD-1s were built into 1949. The aircrew called it the Able Dog after its designation, but would eventually be better known as the SPAD. The version of the SPAD that we have here in War Thunder is the AD-2. The major changes between the AD-1 and the AD-2 were the AD-2 had a much stronger airframe, it had a more powerful 3020 horsepower engine, and internal fuel capacity was raised to 1,414 litres or 380 US gallons. Doors were added for the main landing gear, plus tweaks to the engine installation and to the cockpit arrangement. This was a very tough, very durable, very powerful aircraft, capable of delivering a massive weapons payload with dive bomber precision and accuracy. It was loved by ground troops for the protection it afforded to them when a Skyraider was flying overhead. The amount of weapons, and therefore firepower, that this single-seat, single-engined attack aircraft could carry was nothing short of spectacular. Built-in armament consisted of a single M3 20mm cannon in each wing, with a maximum of 200 rounds per cannon. As far as the external warload went, there was a single centerline stores pylon, a single pylon under each inner wing, and 6 pylons on each outer wing for a total of 15 weapons pylons. The centerline pylon could carry weapons with a weight of up to 3,600 pounds. Each inboard pylon could handle up to 3,000 pounds of weapons, and each outboard pylon could handle up to 500 pounds of weapons. However, the total warload on the outboard pylons for each wing couldn't exceed 2,500 pounds, and since the outboard pylons were very tightly spaced, clearance issues led to limitations on the actual weapons that could be fitted. Total external warload is given as a whopping 8,000 pounds, but that's more the effective limit, not really the practical limit for carrier operations, and not a particularly sane configuration, even though there were cases where Skyraiders were loaded up well in excess of that weight. Navy and Marine pilots converting to the Skyraider thought it was a fantastic aircraft. It was easy to fly, it was powerful, it was tough, it wasn't very pretty, it was noisy, it was smoky, and it guzzled fuel, but it was a pilot's aircraft. Over a dozen Skyraider squadrons were in service when the Korean War broke out on the 25th of June 1950, and within a week Navy Skyraiders were in combat, performing strikes off the carrier USS Valley Forge. Marine Skyraiders didn't get into the fight until October 1951, but the SPAD proved very useful in the Korean War, being capable of delivering 2,000-pound bombs with dive bomber precision. It could take extreme punishment, with countless stories of Skyraiders with huge holes blasted in them, getting the pilots safely back home. The Skyraider remained a very important US Navy and US Marine asset, even after the Korean War. It eventually began to be slowly replaced in service in 1956 by the A4D Skyhawk, another very, very capable aircraft, but the SPAD remained in service for more than a decade longer. In fact, it put in considerable overtime during the Vietnam War. US Navy Skyraiders were among the first aircraft to perform strikes on North Vietnam, when that conflict escalated in 1964. For 4 years, the SPAD would prove its value in close support missions over South Vietnam and incursions into North Vietnam. Ground pounders loved the Skyraider. It had a heavy bomb load, it was capable of very accurate strikes, and it could loiter over the battle area for far longer than a jet attack aircraft. It was particularly well suited to the helicopter escort mission, would often accompany flights of troop helicopters to provide firepower against threats in the landing zone, and also provide security to help protect air rescue helicopters retrieving downed aircrews. Typical ordnance for missions like that included cluster bombs, mine dispensers, unguided rocket pods, sometimes rockets fitted with smoke warheads to mark the ground, and the SUU-11 7.62mm Gatling minigun pods, better for anti-personnel work than the SPAD's own powerful and relatively slow-firing 20mm cannons. Navy Skyraiders even scored a few air-to-air kills against North Vietnamese pilots. On the 20th of June 1965, Lieutenants Charles Hartman and Clinton Johnson, each flying an A-1H Skyraider, were credited with shooting down a MiG-17 with cannon fire. Their flight had been attacked by MiGs, with the SPADs dumping their stores and going into a circle where each could protect the tail of the other. A MiG-17 tried to break into the circle and was blown out of the sky. On the 9th of October 1966, Lieutenant Junior Grade William T. Patton, also flying an A-1H, shot down a MiG-17, again with cannon fire. However, as the war dragged on, air defences steadily improved, and the elderly SPAD became increasingly vulnerable, despite attempts to improve its survivability, for example by the carriage of the AN/ALQ-81 jammer pod on the centerline pylon. The last Navy SPAD missions were flown at the end of 1968, with most of the aircraft being placed on storage in retirement. The last Navy Marine Skyraiders were out of service by 1972, which is not bad for an aircraft that entered service in 1946. Meanwhile, Napalm Priest here is not having an easy time of this. He's managed to score a couple of hits and shot the flaps off that Horton 229 behind him, but he's not giving up. You can't possibly outrun a jet in this thing, so instead he's threading the needle between these smokestacks and trying to get that damaged Horton 229 to crash, and that's exactly what's happened. I don't think the Horton ran into any of those smokestacks, but you can see the smoke column there on the other side of the factory complex. He eventually lost control of the aircraft, probably due to damage that he sustained earlier on, possibly due to Napalm Priest shooting his flaps off, and he's out of it. However, there are still 2 jets left on the enemy team, and up until this point, Napalm Priest has been doing a particularly good job of racking up the ground kills, which is what this thing is for. This is, after all, a ground attack map, and using the rest of his team to get these guys off his back. Unfortunately, he can't do that anymore. Why is that, Jingles? Well, he's the only one left. He's it. He's got no friendly jets left. So instead, he's got to find a way of evening up those odds, and the simplest way to do that is to use the friendly anti-aircraft cover provided by this airfield here. There are still 2 jets left on the enemy team. Oh, I think we have a Horton 2. He didn't actually know at the time, because obviously this is realistic battle. We can see what's left on the enemy team because the replay shows us. Up there in the top right corner of the screen, you can see exactly what the enemy team have. He knows there's an HE-126. He doesn't know there's another Horton 229 up there. He knows there's another 2 enemy pilots, but he doesn't know what they're both flying. So he's loitering, and there we go, there's the anti-aircraft fire. And it's the HE-126. The HE-126 is trying to boom and zoom, do diving attacks on him. Here he comes, and he's dodged. Turns it in the other way. There he goes. You can see the flak lighting him up. If the HE-126 pilot has any kind of sense, he's going to continue trying to boom and zoom. He's not going to get into a low-level dogfight with the Douglas Skyraider. That would just be suicide, particularly with friendly anti-aircraft fire shooting at him as well. So Napalm Priest has got to keep turning at low speed and at low altitude and trying to bait this guy into either crashing or get him shot down by the anti-aircraft fire, and here he comes. Now, what Napalm Priest doesn't know is that that guy is out of ammunition, but he's about to find out as this guy tries to finish him off with an air-to-air ram. At this point, Napalm Priest knows he can now safely land this aircraft because that guy does not have any ammunition. However, he's going to have to do it fast because there are, I actually miscounted earlier, my apologies, there are actually 3 jets still up on the enemy team. One of them, as well as the Horton 229, is an Arado 234C, and that's the cannon-armed version of the German jet bomber. However, he's going too fast at the moment to be able to safely put this thing down. The HE-162 is coming around for another ram attempt, and there's the Arado, and he's just seen them in time, manages to dodge his cannon fire. The HE-162 is coming in. He's losing speed in the manoeuvres that he's pulling, trying to shake this guy off his tail and avoid the ram. Pulls it into a hard turn, and I think he's managed to avoid it. Yep, there he goes up above, and as he's watching for the HE-162, the Arado 234 crashes. There it is. Not sure why. Not sure if he... There he goes. You can see him burning down there. Now, the Arado is off his back. No sign of the Horton 229. He's got to put this thing down on the ground, get it rearmed for a more suitable air-to-air configuration rather than the air-to-ground loadout which he initially went with, and watch how close he comes to crashing this thing. He's dropping the landing gear. It almost, not quite, just manages to get the landing gear down in time as he puts this thing down on the ground. But look at that! Oh wow! Did you see that ram attempt? That was some spectacular flying from the HE-162 pilot. He missed the ground by inches, but it was a complete waste of time. You cannot ram an aircraft when it's on the ground. It just does not work in War Thunder, as you quite clearly saw. He flew right through him. So now, well, all the HE-162 can do is loiter in the sky above the airstrip and try to repeat the procedure when Napalm Priest has loaded and gets this thing back into the air. But while Napalm Priest is doing his rearm and reload, the HE-162 crashes. You can see him burning over there in the distance. Not sure why. Possibly, well, it must have been due to overall damage sustained while he was getting shot at by flak and various other aircraft. But now it's a one-on-one, and Napalm Priest doesn't know what he's up against. He knows that there's one other pilot left on the enemy team. We can see, because it's a replay, that it's a guy in a jet Horton 229. Napalm Priest has no idea. He's changed his loadout before he took off. He's still got the rockets, but he's lost the 1,000-pound bombs, and instead of the ground target ammunition for his 20mm cannons, he's gone for a more suitable ammunition load. with the ground target ammunition, you have 2 armor piercing for every high explosive fragmentation round. So he's got more high explosive frag ammo and less of the armor piercing. But he doesn't know where the Horton 229 is. So, well, it is a ground attack mission after all, and you are in a Douglas Skyraider, so let's blow some shit up. And those medium tanks are looking like a pretty inviting target for your rockets. Plenty of them. Shame to put them to waste. Yep, he's going for the medium tanks. Let's see how he does. Damn, son, that was some fancy shooting. Not bad at all. Alright. Well, if the Horton 229 pilot is paying attention to his map and the combat messages, he is going to know more or less where to look for Napalm Priest. And, is that? There he is! Yep, he's coming in. He dodges the return fire, pulls it round. Whoa, that was close. And that's, well, this is the point at which Napalm Priest realises that he is in fact up against another jet. And you know what? It doesn't rattle him. Watch this. The Horton's gone into a climb. He's going to gain more altitude to reverse, come back and dive on him again. And Napalm Priest is casually still shooting up ground targets. He just doesn't care. And he's done it. He's taken out another bunker. Now, where did the Horton 229 go? Is he... He's not going to do it again. No, surely not. He's being quite casual about the fact that there's a jet fighter bomber setting up for a dive on him here. Where has he gone? Oh, I can't see him, but he's obviously seen him. He's pulling it into a hard turn. He's throwing it all over the sky. There he is. Here he comes. And I think he's managed to make him overshoot. This is tense. This is it. Sudden death. There's only 2 of them left. I doubt this one's going to end in a draw somehow. One of them's going to die. Who's it going to be? The odds are heavily in the Horton 229's favour. All he has to do is keep booming and zooming. Napalm Priest can't run away from him. He's still trying to get those ground target kills though, even though his ammunition loadout is no longer suitable for it. Oh, here he comes, here he comes. He ducks, he dodges, he dives, he weaves, and the Horton 229 makes a critical error. He overshoots, he leaves it too late to pull up, passes underneath the Skyraider, and pulls up in front of his guns. And, well, Napalm Priest only had a couple of seconds to take the shot and make the hit. Otherwise, the Horton was going to be out of range and able to boom and zoom on him again, but thanks to the error that the Horton pilot committed by coming up in front of Napalm Priest's guns, he's able to saw his wing off and win the match with an air-to-air kill in the Douglas Skyraider. And the amount of awards that Napalm Priest took home from this match are nothing short of spectacular. He finished that game with 15 ground kills, 1 jet air kill. He got the Final Blow Award, the Best Squad Award, the Anti-Mech Award, the Terror of the Sky Award, in a Skyraider, in a jet match. The Balancer Award because he was the lowest battle rating aircraft in the match, and the Bulletproof Award. Wow. Before we finish the video, a couple of amusing things to note about this match. Napalm Priest's team only managed to shoot down 3 aircraft. Napalm Priest got 1, and one of his other jet pilots got 2. There were 7 aircraft on the enemy team. 5 of them crashed, so I feel that a certain amount of credit should go to the enemy team for Napalm Priest's victory in that match. But still, one hell of an accomplishment, flying a Skyraider prop ground attack aircraft in a predominantly jet fighter game and not losing. It's just, I wish I was that lucky. Also, one final thing to take note of, Napalm Priest has only just unlocked the Skyraider. He doesn't have it fully upgraded. Check this out. Yeah, look at that. That's the equipment that he's unlocked on this aircraft. He's gone predominantly for the weapons loadout, so he can, you know, bomb targets and do his job as a ground attack aircraft. He's got almost none of the flight upgrades. If you're watching this video, guys, and you were on the enemy team in that match, hang your heads in shame. And don't forget, he's predominantly an arcade pilot. He's very rarely flown realistic battles, although I suspect on the strength of this performance, he's probably got the taste for it. And we're going to see him flying more realistic battles in the future. So that was Napalm Priest in the Douglas AD-2 Skyraider in War Thunder. I hope you enjoyed watching that match half as much as I did, because I thought it was hilarious. And I hope you did too. As always, folks, take care, and I'll catch you next time.